New piece in New York Mag that caught our attention. Let's put this up on the screen. The headline here is AOC is just a regular old Democrat, now charting her course from potential revolutionary to just another member of the Democratic caucus. And the author of that piece joins us now, Freddie deBoer. He is a writer and also author and has a new book coming out we're very excited about titled How Elites Ate the Social Justice Movement that is going to be dropping this fall. Freddie, great to see you.
Good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure. So I think my first question for you is just, we've sort of seen this trajectory from AOC for a while now. What was it that inspired you to write this piece right at this moment?
I think that for me in particular, as I tried to sort of point out with the piece, people don't just sort of betray some sort of fundamental idea like one time. I mean, certainly there can be particular moments when you sort of go mask off and show who you are. But to me, it's a steady accumulation of things that I think don't sort of fit with the rhetoric about AOC in her actual specific voting behavior. So one of the things I tried to do is just refer to very specific moments of things that she did on the floor of Congress as a legislator and say these don't sort of comport with what she sort of is portrayed as and what she has portrayed herself as. But also, and a big part of the piece is less intended to be sort of AOC is a traitor. And it's more supposed to be sort of saying like, I don't know what the coherent sort of ideological perspective is that underlines her actual voting behavior and the way that she acts in Congress. If there's anything that I think for me represents the thing that really turned my own stomach about her, it's when she voted to forbid railway workers, from the right to strike. Because that is, to me, sort of black letter socialist / lefty / radical stuff, is that you simply do not forbid workers their right to strike. We just saw UPS workers get a much better deal than what they had initially been offered because they had a credible right to strike that would have cost their company billions of dollars. And so that, to me, if there's any one thing. But for me, it's just more a steady sort of accumulation of noticing that there just aren't a lot of behaviors that reflect any kind of coherent plan going on. And then appearing on Pod Save America to endorse Joe Biden. Number one, you don't have to endorse at all. Your vote, right. Your endorsement is not going to change any votes, probably. I mean, the number of people who are saying, I'm going to vote for RFK, but then AOC endorsed Biden, so I'm going to switch my vote is minimal. If you have to endorse, you can send out a one-sentence press release and do it that way, right? Just a few days before AOC made that appearance, the Pod Save America bros had a moment where they were actively laughing. I mean, literally like convulsing in laughter at the idea that they should have to appeal to left voters, that persuasion with left voters is necessary. And so for me, that kind of crystallizes this sense that AOC is part of a perspective where, however benevolent many of her impulses may be, the left is owned by the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party never has to offer us anything for our votes. And that if we don't vote for the Democratic Party, it must be because we love Trump.
So, Freddie, what are some of the jump-off points that you can point to, both in the piece and throughout the career, where we started to see, like you said, mask off? You referenced the rail strike. Does it predate that? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for me, just in terms of just not knowing what she's doing, the vote about the Israeli Iron Dome funding, which is Israel's missile defense shield that the United States pays for, as the United States pays for a huge portion of Israel's military machine. To me, that's a problem, not just because she didn't vote the way that I wanted to, but because I have just no idea what she's doing with her vote. So for those who don't know, when that vote came up, there were a couple people who had been talking about voting against it. She cried on the floor of Congress in solidarity with Palestinian people. And then when the up or down, yes or no vote came up to vote for or against funding the Iron Dome, She voted present. Now, for one thing, right, I don't like that because I want her to vote no, because I support Palestinian solidarity, and I don't want her to support the Israeli war machine. The fact that she was going to lose that vote is irrelevant. You still vote with your conscience. But let's suppose that she wanted to do it for some sort of strategic reason. The first thing to say is anyone who's a hardcore supporter of Israel is never going to support Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right? If she was doing this to try to court, Zionist voters, that's very strange because I don't think they're ever going to be in her corner anyway. But also, if you were going to do that, if you were just going to say, you know what, I want to stand for defending Israel against sort of Palestinian solidarity, then you vote yes, right? Voting present is nothing. It is literally the worst of all worlds. You're not expressing solidarity with the Palestinian people. You're also not getting whatever meager political benefit you might have gotten for voting in favor of Israel. It just sort of seems like a very aimless act. And so this is the point, sort of the broader point with this piece is that I'm not so much interested in like castigating an individual member of the sort of left Democrat caucus. I am saying, look, the Bernie Sanders primary campaign, which is where so much of this coalesced and we started to get this momentum, it was 7 years ago. I don't have the slightest idea what left Democrats think their approach to politics is. Some of the critics of the piece were like, oh, you're expecting her to be able to will legislation out of nowhere. I know she can't pass legislation on her own, but what I would really love to see, right, is like some coherent sense of what she thinks her role as a legislator is, and a sense that these people are sort of working in tandem to say, okay, the way that we grow is this, or the way we move forward in this. And all I see in so many of the things that she's done is a complete lack of sort of direction.
Let me just ask you though. So, I mean, I understand why you focus on AOC, and I wrote not a similar piece. Yours was much better than mine, but I also had some reflections after she endorsed Biden in the pod save thing, because it's just like, oh, really? This is how low we've stooped. But I don't think anyone is under the illusion now that AOC is going to lead us to the socialist promised land. However, do you think it's better that she be there than Joe Crowley or any of the many other myriad of Democrats? Yeah, I'm thinking of Josh Gottheimer, right? Gottheimer runs around accusing everybody who, says anything critical ever of Israel of being an anti-Semite, pushes these resolutions, which, by the way, AOC voted against. That's like, we stand with Israel always and forever, no matter what. He also pushes things that are also really odious economically in terms of lifting the salt tax cap, which is basically a giveaway to the wealthy. So no, they're not going to lead us to the promised land. But do you think it's still better to have AOC and the rest of the squad members than another set of more right-wing Democrats?
If I was voting for the House of Representatives tomorrow and my choices were between Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Joe Crowley, I would certainly choose AOC. But I also think it's important to say, one of the things I've been trying to put out into the universe with people is, okay, what fundamentally would have been different had Joe Crowley kept his seat, right? Like, think of major moments in the recent American political history. What has sort of happened because of AOC that would not have happened with Joe Crowley or vice versa, that something that Joe Crowley would have done that AOC would not have. And I think that it's much harder to sort of come up with a version of how that hypothetical America is different than if Joe Crowley just kept his seat and the machine Democrat sort of kept his seat. One thing I think people don't realize is AOC's district is notorious for bad turnout. So even though she's in the biggest city in the country, in her first 2018 primary campaign against Joe Crowley, she won that primary with less than 18,000 votes, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there are small towns in Connecticut where the mayor gets more than 18,000 votes for, to get that office, right? So you're talking about a figure who's sort of been advanced into this national stage based on very little in the way of sort of public support. I would like for the sort of the vision of AOC to sort of match the reality. I mean, one of the things that I've been asking everybody to do is allow me to consider this person as a legislator like any other. I got some very sharp and interesting criticism about the piece, but the large majority of the response has been just really sort of irrational, angry. How could you betray this person, sort of thing?
Mm-hmm.
And she's in Congress, right? Like, she is a representative of the people, and you criticize them when they aren't doing things that are consonant with your values. If I had written that piece about some backbench Democrat who had an identical voting record to AOC, the
Mm-hmm.
people who got so angry at me wouldn't have batted an eye. And I
No.
think if there's anything that's going to happen, if she is going to be a long-term politician, I'm asking people if maybe we can dissolve the cult of AOC, look at her as a legislator like any other, evaluate her votes, evaluate her endorsements, and make our judgments from there.
So let me ask you this, on which dovetails with what you're saying. You close the piece saying Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was once a symbol of what American politics might become. Now she's a message to the rest of us. It's going to take more than symbols. Is the issue here with AOC personally, or is it more of a structural critique? Like, was it always going to be impossible that no matter her radical intentions, we would end up in the same place? Or do you think a different person or a different group of people might have been able to muster more power? Because I look, for example, at some examples in the Republican caucus. The Tea Party was able to use a minority of the caucus to great effect to get their wishes. You just had the House Freedom Caucus, which has used, a small group of legislators who were willing to band together and kind of be assholes and throw some sand in the gears. And they were able to also accomplish some key priorities. So is the problem with the strategy? Is the problem with individuals? And what is sort of your diagnosis of what a better direction would be?
I mean, it's a little bit of both. Look, again, to respond to the most common criticism, I'm not unaware of how sort of structurally disadvantaged, leftist and socialist politicians are in the United States. This is a country with, 70 years of Red Scare tactics when the Soviet Union exists, and now just as long of an effort to crush labor unions, which is the heart of the left. And so I don't expect more from these people than is possible. But you mentioned the Tea Party, and it's, I just think that any rational evaluation of the far left and the far right in this country, you would have to acknowledge that the far right gets more of what it wants, despite the fact that in many cases they themselves don't have anything like numerical majorities, than the far left gets. And I think that this is structural and baked into the nature of the Democratic Party. It's simply a fact that, this was the story of Obama, right? Which is you had congressional Republicans during his administration who just relentlessly moved to the center, and Obama constantly chased that moved center to try to be the more sort of rational person, the more sort of adult in the room person, which again was another big part of the response to this piece, which is, this is not how politics actually is. Grown up politics is like this. But those definitions are exactly what people on the far right have never done. So, I look at the end of Roe v. Wade, which for me is a nightmare. But you look at the people who made that happen. When Roe v. Wade, when that decision came down, even a large majority of Republicans supported a woman's right to choose. It was one of the things that made Roe v. Wade a landmark case was that it was public policy finally being brought into line with public opinion in terms of a woman's right to choose. Those people never stopped to say, those anti-choice people, those anti-abortion people, never said, let's get serious, let's be responsible. Oh, politics is about compromise. We need to moderate our opinion. If you look at the history of their movement, all they did was ruthlessly pursue that outcome, which they got, which is the end of Roe v. Wade, over the course of decades. And it's just a perpetual frustration of mine that you just have these examples of people on the right just sort of going to absolutely any lengths that they need to get their agenda, while people on the left fret and worry and want to appear reasonable and need to sort of care about compromise when the other side isn't doing that, and they're empowered because they don't do it.
I think that is all very well said, and the piece is really, really well written, and I think brings out some key points that people who care about left progress need to pay attention to. Freddie, as always, great to chat with you. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. It was a big week here. Thanks to all our premium subscribers. BreakingPoints.com if you can, and we'll see you next week.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to BreakingPoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's BreakingPoints.com.